Strategy development. What is a strategy? Ano nga ba ang strategy? Whenever I'm asked what a strategy is, I actually don't know what to say what it is. Different people have different ideas of what a strategy is. Is it the activities? Is it the approach? Is it an invisible hand that will dictate how the organization should behave or approach a certain problem? Some would say it's a plan, consciously intended course of action, ano yung intent ng organization. Some would say it's a pattern. So it's not really formal, it's just how everyone is executing their job and how the organization is going with the flow. Some would say it's a ploy, a specific maneuver to outwit a certain threat. Some would say it's a position or a niche for an organization. What is this NGO contributing that other NGOs are not doing sa community? Para saan ba yung bagong PO? Meron bang serbisyo na hindi na ibibigay ng co-op, ng PO na ginawa ni Mayor, etc.? Or maybe it's a perspective, an ingrained way of perceiving the world that provides the organization that way of going forward. What are the different strategy development approaches? Actually, marami siya. It started with the design approach, trying to get that fit between the internal capacities and the external opportunities and challenges. Siyempre, nangingibabaw dito yung SWOT analysis, and it has been criticized for being static. The planning approach actually just formalized the design approach. Again, it's been criticized for being not supportive of real-time strategy development, or what they call creative accidents. The positioning approach is very similar to the design approach, but it is more conscious of how different players in the industry, which are similar to the organization, are laid out. Nasaan ka ba compared to other organizations that provide similar services? The power approach tried to push the power of the organization into the industry. Self-interest, fragmentation, negotiation between power structures, highly conflict-oriented. Nauso rin yung entrepreneurial, very vision-centered. Follow the design but relied on the leader's intuition. Cognitive, cognition used to construct strategies as creative interpretation. Again, criticized, too subjective, just in strategist's head. Learning, quite a dominant approach lately. It surfaced emergent strategies. All members of strategies who incorporate lessons learned in plans. Has been criticized for being chaotic and too process-oriented. Cultural, coalesce, common interest and integration, not suited for radical changes. Environmental, basically just react to what's the environment telling you what to do. Process in response to challenges imposed by the environment. All strategies have severe limitations. So just react to the environment. And then there's the configuration, integrate and transform, process of transforming the organization from one type of decision-making structure into another, polarized between descriptive and prescriptive approaches. Again, quite complex and quite fluid for people to immediately grasp. So what's the basic strategizing process? You have that intended strategy that is analyze, and then you make that strategic choice of which strategy to use, and then you implement it, and then you evaluate it, and it goes through that cycle. It usually goes through a formal strategic planning system. You use your traditional tools such as SWOT, and then sometimes some organizations, if it's too large, have specific units doing that strategizing process, parang yung planning unit ng mga local government units. It has to be said that the simplicity and that holistic internal external perspective of the SWOT are essential elements for the strategic planning process. And then, while implementing the strategy, informal, intuitive, adaptive strategizing takes place. Sometimes there would be formal or informal strategies that would provide that kind of thinking or initiate that kind of thinking. Magsisurface na doon yung mga emergent strategies at malalaglag yung mga ibang strategies na hindi na fit. At doon lalabas yung ating actual strategy. It has to be said that strategies born out of adapting to the changing context are not necessarily the best, but they may be fit for the changed context. For example, our situation right now in terms of this online class, right at the get-go, hindi natin iisipin na mag-online class na lang tayo imbis na mag-face-to-face interaction sa classroom. Simply because there would be the face-to-face interaction is a more conducive learning environment. So we won't choose the online class over that kind of strategy. But given this situation right now, we would use the online class simply because it's the best fit for this changed context. So the lesson here is maybe the focus should not necessarily be in the adaptation, na best practice itong online class, but instead focus on our adaptability, on the organization's adaptability. Kaya kung minsan, may mga proposals on climate change, a lot of best practices would look at what's the climate change adaptation for this scenario. Sometimes what is more essential is how do the communities actually analyze the situation so that they can actually adapt, can create those adaptation methods. Because sometimes the adaptation of one area may not be fit for this community. Some models in developing the strategy. We have the strategy pyramid versus the strategy stretch. The strategy pyramid, we're all used to this. We define the vision, the mission, the goals of the organization, which is the contribution of the organization for that vision. And then the strategies come out, the tactics, the action plan. The strategy stretch, on the other hand, is you have a strategic intent, and then the organization faces challenges, opportunities, and how does the organization play with these challenges and opportunities. So it attempts to survive, to go with the flow, using this kind of strategy stretch. The pyramid is effective in known and stable environment, building on existing competencies of the organization. On the other hand, the strategy stretch is said to be effective in new and unstable environment. It builds on new competencies of the organization. The lesson here is the key is not getting the right strategy, but fostering strategic thinking for the entire organization. There's also that need for openness of the organization to emergent strategies and informal processes. It's not that emergent strategies are not coming out. Sometimes the organization may be too fixated on the written vision, mission, and goals strategies. too fixated on the proposal already submitted to the funding agency, already committed to certain actions to other stakeholders, that the emergent strategies that may be a better fit to new challenges and opportunities are just ignored or undermined. At first, I thought the strategy stretch is very idealistic. Nangyayari ba talaga to sa tunay na buhay? Meron ba talagang sophisticated organization that can actually do this strategic intent? Maybe the Google company, maybe the new organizations would be able to do this strategic intent. But reflecting on the different organizations, POs, volunteer NGOs, and maybe startups have been heavily criticized for being unprofessional, for not having the sophisticated and formal VMG and strategies. Nakita naman natin to nung diniscuss natin yung POET, self-assessment tool, Octagon, etc. If you don't have this formal VMG, you're considered as emerging palang o newbie, or this is not your ideal state. But the lack of resources are actually pushing these organizations to apply the strategy stretch. Gaano karaming POs ba yung hindi makapaglatag ng long-term goals dahil hindi naman alam kung merong resources, o kaya ay kahit na may VMG ka, biglang dumating ang opportunity, may bagong call for proposals, may nilatag na bagong programa ang mayor, yung PO will easily grab that opportunity and make the most of that, and they can easily be accused of partisan politics, but those are the limited resources available. Those are the opportunities to address their current challenges, and they will grab it and try to make the most out of it. And POs are not the only ones vulnerable to this, even NGOs. I guess the lesson here is beware of the Robin Hood syndrome. Whilst the strategic intent may be clear, CSOs may fall to the traps of partisan politics, unethical practices, etc. But what is it all about? It's about bringing to life the change we aspire to create or contribute to. It's about sensing if we and our organization are actually bringing about or getting closer to that change that we desired. It's enhancing our capacity to create our future or learning. And it's making a difference in the lives of the people we serve and the people we love the most. The end.